Good morning, everyone. Bon matin à tous. Nous recommençons. We begin again. This meeting, the clerk has advised me that everybody has been sound tested and we're fine, and we do have a quorum. So I call the meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 63 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills, Social Development, and the Status of Persons with Disabilities. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to House Order of June 23, 2022. Members will be attending in person in the room, as you can see, and virtually online. Before speaking and to ensure an orderly meeting, please wait until I recognize you by name. And you have the option of choosing to speak and participate in the official language of your choice. Interpretation services are available in the room. Use the translation earpiece. Online, you at the bottom of your surface, you can choose French and English. If there is a problem with interpretation, please get my attention. We'll suspend while it's corrected. As well, please, for your benefit, screenshots are not allowed of the meeting today in the room or virtually. Also, if you do not have a House of Commons approved headset, you cannot participate in the meeting verbally. If you're a member of the committee, you can participate in the voting format by simply indicating, but I will not recognize you to participate verbally. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Friday, February the 3rd, 2023, the committee will continue its study of Bill C-35, an act respecting early learning and childcare in Canada. As I said, everybody's been tested, so I would like to welcome our witnesses, beginning with in person in the room. Good morning, Mr. Mitchell, Peter John Mitchell, Program Director of CARDIS. From the College of Early Childhood Educators, Bette D. Zealy, and please correct me if I got that wrong, Madame. From the First Nations of Quebec and Labrador Health and Social Services Commission, Richard Gray, Manager, and Patrice Lacasse, Manager. And Mr. Lacasse may be the one participating because I believe we have an issue with Mr. Gray. So each of the witnesses will begin with 5 minutes this morning. We just have one round of questions, 6 minutes to each of the parties. Oh, okay. So we'll begin with Mr. Mitchell for 5 minutes, and I would ask the witnesses to please stay within the 5-minute time allotment so we can get our questions in. Mr. Mitchell, you have the floor.
Well, thank you for the invitation to appear this morning, and thank you for the work of this committee in support of families across Canada. CARDIS is a nonpartisan think tank dedicated to clarifying and strengthening, through research and dialogue, the ways in which people, institutions, and governments work together for the common good. I direct our family program at CARDIS, which explores how to strengthen family stability. Child care is the care of a child, regardless who provides that care, whether by a licensed provider, an in-home caregiver, a neighbor, relative, or parent who forgoes income. Statistics Canada data shows that Canadians rely on diverse forms of care to meet their needs. Bill C-35 supports only a limited number of care options. The bill enshrines inequitable treatment of families based on the type of care that they use. Canadian data and international examples show that higher income families are more likely to access subsidized licensed care compared to lower income families. There are better, more equitable ways and options to support the care needs of Canadian families. However, should Bill C-35 proceed, I recommend 3 amendments. First, Section 5E should reflect that parents and guardians are have the primary responsibility for the upbringing and development of their children. Parents are best positioned to make the care choices for their children. In the brief we submitted to the committee, we provide wording that reflects the phrasing found in Article 18 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, the same article from which Section 5 of the bill draws its inspiration. Second, Section 7(1)A discriminates against licensed independent operators in favor of public and not-for-profit providers. This discrimination harms families and hampers the government's own goals. This discrimination contravenes an earlier statement in the bill supporting the importance of flexible early learning and childcare programs. Many of the agreements prevent funding intended for space creation and growth from going to licensed independent providers who are currently serving Canadian families. This discrimination hampers accessibility. Currently, there is only enough licensed spaces for about 1/3 of Canadian children under the age of 6. The aggressive space creation targets within the Canada-wide agreements are proving difficult to achieve. In the first year of its agreement, Saskatchewan exceeded its space creation budget only to achieve 37% of its space creation target. The Financial Accountability Office of Ontario estimates that in that province, families of 25% of children under the age of 6 who want a highly subsidized space will be unable to access one. It is very unlikely that space creation targets will be met without independent licensed providers. Third, Section 16 regarding annual reporting must be strengthened. The desire to report on progress within the bill should be applauded, but Section 16 should be more specific. The federal government collects detailed financial data and progress towards targets from the provinces annually. The agreements, in most cases, state that provinces may report progress to the public. To my knowledge, only 2 provinces have publicly reported on the progress made during the first year of their agreements within the timeline specified in their agreements. One way to remedy this is to strengthen federal reporting requirements within the bill, requiring the federal government to release detailed expenditures and progress towards stated targets for each province. How well are families being served by the Canada-wide program? Caring for vulnerable populations, such as children, is complex and expensive. We should be striving for higher levels of accountability. Child care is the care of the child, regardless of who provides that care. We should strive for policy options that treat families fairly and offers true flexibility to families as they select the care that best meets their needs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Ms. Dezelli?
Thank you.
Could you pronounce your name, your last name for me?
It's
please?
Deasley. You were very close.
Oh, Deasley. Oh, my apologies. Ms. Deasley for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Good morning. As the Registrar and CEO of the Ontario College of Early Childhood Educators, I'm honored to join today's panel and to provide our insights on the proposed legislation. Our college is responsible for regulating the profession of early childhood education in Ontario, with a mandate to establish registration requirements, ethical standards, requirements for continuous professional learning, and a complaints process to ensure that the interests of children and families are prioritized and protected. Our work also includes maintaining a comprehensive public register of our members. This scope of regulatory activity is unique and does not currently occur in any other jurisdiction in Canada. In recent years, we've helped raise the profession's standards by implementing a mandatory sexual abuse prevention program for educators, by providing guidance on the inclusion of children with disabilities, and by recognizing that acts of racism and discrimination by educators constitute professional misconduct. Our membership data report shows over 60,000 early childhood educators currently in Ontario, with nearly 30,000 additionally who were registered at one time during the past 15 years, but who have now left the profession. This kind of data is valuable when considering workforce challenges and isn't collected by any other organization. While we acknowledge the importance of all of the principles in Bill C-35, we wish to emphasize that measures intended to support affordability and expansion of childcare spaces should not compromise the quality of early learning and childcare. We believe it's vital to safeguard against policy solutions that may focus on increasing access in the short term, but which may exacerbate longer-term systemic problems that impact quality. While there's no universally accepted definition of quality, what research has demonstrated is that qualified and well-supported educators are the most significant contributor to early years programs that result in better outcomes for children and for families. We're concerned that the proposed legislation does not sufficiently reflect the importance of ensuring a qualified and well-supported workforce. The concept of professional educators includes not just minimum standards of qualification, but also an ongoing obligation to practice in accordance with standards, to put the interests of children and families first, and continue development opportunities throughout a professional's career. So our first request is for the inclusion in the legislation of a fifth guiding principle that clearly articulates the need for a workforce composed of qualified, professional, and well-supported educators. This would help to ensure that funding and policy initiatives focus on supporting and developing the workforce. Ontario, like many other provinces, is facing a workforce crisis in childcare. And while high numbers of educators enter the field each year, people leave at nearly the same rate. To address this, it's necessary to focus first on retention by addressing systemic issues, which include working conditions, program resourcing, compensation, and opportunities for professional growth that are contributing to attrition, rather than overemphasizing mechanisms to increase recruitment of new educators. Our second request is for the opportunity to participate in the work of the National Advisory Council. As a unique organization with data-informed insights about the profession, the college's inclusion on the Advisory Council would help to maintain standards for professional educators, ensure that data informs decisions, prioritize the public interest, and help maintain quality in the Canada-wide early learning and childcare program as it's implemented across jurisdictions. Thank you for the opportunity to join you today to provide our perspective. We look forward to collaborating on this critical work, and I'm happy to answer any questions from the committee.
Thank you, Ms. Deasley. We'll now go to Mr. Lacasse for 5 minutes.
Bonjour à tous, députés, président.
MPs and Chair of the Committee, thank you for the invitation to share the perspectives of the First Nations. I have to acknowledge that we're on the Wendat territory, while the offices of the Commission are in Wendake. I'm from the Washak-Leteman community. I represent the First Nations of Quebec and Labrador Health and Social Services Commission. So our job is to be with the committees in terms of their goals of culture and self-determination. There are several aspects that are linked to health and social services and young children. The Commission was created by the Assembly of First Nations of Quebec, Labrador in 1994 and receives its mandates from that entity, be it for the Secretariat or for the political aspects. And we also receive mandates from the Board of Governors, which has the directors of health and social services from the various communities. In terms of this bill, the main recommendation of the document provided wants a specific and separate bill for First Nations, which concerns learning and child care of Indigenous children. So these are things that could considerably improve what's proposed in Bill C-35. The goal is to better respond to the specific needs and realities of each community. But even though Bill C-35 acknowledges this and emphasizes this, we consider that it minimizes the needs and the realities of each community, be it in terms of access to services, in terms of the geographical realities of languages and cultures. In terms of the implementation, in terms of Indigenous self-determination, one of the basic principles is the power to decide of the First Nations. That must be in the hands of the First Nations. So in the context of the ELCC, and it's confirmed by the department, the Canadian Department, the right of self-determination to control the design, delivery, and administration of a healthcare design system is confirmed, and it corresponds to our aspirations. So you have this an act respecting First Nations, Inuit, and Métis children called C-92, where the jurisdiction of First Nations and Indigenous people is recognized in terms of services to children, and we're wondering why it could not be done with C-35 or with a specific act concerning Indigenous people. So Canada recognizes the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and works on its implementation. We understand the principle of self-determination in ELCC, but we have to recognize the First Nation self-determination and jurisdiction in terms of early childhood to have an application of the ELCC which be most effective and which can attribute the powers and capacity to do so to the First Nations. In terms of the ELCC system, we don't use the normal system. It's last spring that the association had a agreement with the ESDC, so we favor local aspects. It's not just one sector. We want to favor not working in silos. We were conditioned by programs for too long, and so we're asking for the development of a plan based on the needs. And we want to make sure that the actions taken be based on those needs and can respond to the needs of early childhood and also of the environment of the child, which are family and the community. I have to stop here to respect the time that's been allotted to me, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much, Mr. Lacasse.
Two questions, beginning with Madame Ferrari for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all of our witnesses for being here today at HUMA to discuss Bill C-35. Valuable conversation to ensure that we are helping as many Canadian families and putting the child first at the nucleus of this discussion. If I can start with you, Mr. Mitchell. One of the things you said that's a major concern, I think, to a lot of parents who are experiencing this is that currently only a third of all children have spaces. And in your data that you've provided, you are predicting that that will get worse. Do you have the data or research on those numbers of what the wait lists are expected to grow to?
In terms of wait lists, sorry?
Spaces, accessibility to spaces.
Right. So I don't know that we can predict what those wait lists will be. We certainly know that early on, provinces have been missing their targets. So, for instance, I quoted that Saskatchewan only met 37% of its space creation target by the end of the first year of its agreement. Certainly, we would know more if more data were available from the provinces, which has been collected and has been sent to the federal government, which is why we support increasing this and strengthening the bill in terms of reporting requirements in Section 16. Also, I think you mentioned there low-income families. We do know from Canadian data over the last 10 years that low-income families are likely to access licensed care, maybe as much as 20% less likely, according to Statistics Canada. So this is a concern because we are rapidly reducing the cost of these spaces, existing spaces, which are more likely to be used by middle and higher income families. And I think we are certainly not creating enough spaces fast enough to accommodate.
Will deeply impact our sort of rural communities, right? One of the things that's really interesting in your report that you've submitted to the committee is you've said all public, not-for-profit, and private license providers are bound by the same provincial licensing standards, yet Bill C-35 discriminates against private license providers and the families that rely on them. You spoke a lot about discrimination in this bill, intended or unintended. Can you expand on the discrimination that you see and the quickest way to fix that? And I don't mean to rush you, but I only have a certain amount of time.
Yes, I think actually a lot of the agreements limit the amount of money that can go towards space creation for for-profit or independent providers. This is creating significant stress among these providers when we speak with them. Facing cost control frameworks, it's hard for them to look at future planning. So certainly this puts in jeopardy the spaces that they're providing if they can't sustain that, and that hurts Canadian families that use those spaces. Certainly it's difficult to expand and to grow and to achieve the spaces that the federal government would like to achieve without the help of these providers. And so I think that hurts future families that are looking for licensed care in the licensed sector. We do know from a briefing note from British Columbia that for-profit providers tend to be a little quicker in terms of being able to action space creation and be able to create those spaces. But I've spoken to providers across the country, and they're quite concerned about the future. And I know in some cases they've put plans for expansion on hold.
There's a section in here that it says costs will balloon at the expense of quality. Do you have the research that you can table to the committee on what those costs will be and what you're projecting or where you obtained that data?
So previous to the federal announcement in 2021, I believe, we did a costing estimate looking at what a national program might cost. And our high-end estimate suggested there would be $36 billion over budget. So I can certainly make Look Before You Leap, that report available if you like. Unfortunately, we have seen in Quebec has the lowest ratios, which affects quality. It's just extremely difficult to, and we've seen costs go up in Quebec, so it's difficult to lower the cost of childcare and to build these programs without sacrificing quality. I think we've seen that in Quebec, unfortunately, and I'm worried that we're going to entrench a low-quality system in Canada.
Quickly, if I may, Mr. Mitchell, these provincial and territorial agreements have already been signed. And in your submission, you've talked that these were put forth in 2017, 2018. Why do you think that the bill has been put forward now when it's already done? Like, what would be the benefit from the Liberal government's perspective to all of a sudden put forth a bill when all of these agreements have already been done?
So there have been bilateral agreements that have been put forward, and then the new Canada-wide program sort of layers on top of that. So in a sense, I believe the agreements do the heavy lifting already, so it does make the bill somewhat curious that it's necessary as the provinces and the federal government have agreed to the terms in those bills, so that's already being enacted out. So in our submission, we did say that we do find it curious that the legislation would even be necessary, as it's really the agreements that does the heavy lifting, and that's actually where it should happen.
Thank you so much. How much time? 6 seconds. Oh, okay. Okay, thank you so much. I was just going to ask Ms. Deasley about tabling some data about her workforce as well, if she could, to the committee, because I think it's valuable in recruitment and retainment to keep these spaces available for parents who are waiting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Ferrari. Madame Sachs, pour this.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to all of our witnesses who have joined us this morning. Mr. Mitchell, I'd like to start with one of your recommendations that the bill be amended to no longer prioritize investment in the nonprofit sector. I'm curious as to why your organization is looking for the government to fund care that, according to a specific study that you quoted, Krista Japel was actually here recently, that your own report used her report to support your evidence, but her testimony 3 days ago was contradictory to that, where she actually said that nonprofit care provides higher quality care, either very good or excellent quality, compared to the for-profit or unlicensed care, which was about 10% of poor quality care. So could you lean in on that just briefly?
Yeah, thank you. When we look at quality, we look at structural dimensions, which include staff-child ratios, group size, staff qualifications, as I said, and then process dimensions, which look more at the experience that the child has with a caregiver. And so we certainly know that there, as I think was said earlier by another witness, that we don't necessarily have a consistent definition of quality, but I would say that those are the two measures. Sort of a well-known report issued some years ago called You Bet I Care, focusing largely on staffing and working conditions, concluded that the majority of licensed care in Canada is of minimal to mediocre quality. So I do acknowledge that there have been reports suggesting that for-profit care may be a lower quality. But I think you don't want to assume that all care across Canada is necessarily high quality when I think the same researchers are saying.
I understand.
Yeah.
However, we've had numerous witnesses here that have said to the contrary on that, so I'm just trying to understand that. I'd like to move on, if I may. Your organization has also advocated for income splitting for Canadian families as a means for providing care. Is that still your position?
I've advocated for income splitting in the past, yes.
Do you have concerns the fact that this policy would benefit the wealthiest Canadians? You know, we've talked about access for low income through a nonprofit nationwide system. Your recommendation would not impact them.
I'm sorry?
Well, if you do support income splitting, do you have any concerns that a policy like that would benefit the wealthiest of Canadians when the concern around, certainly this committee, is access through a system that would help low-income families?
Yeah, I'm not aware that income splitting is on the table. In fact, I think it was repealed a long time ago.
Asking about your contemplation on that for your organization.
I support income splitting because I think it helps families.
Okay, I understand. And just moving on, if I may, I've had some time reading your organization's documents. Your organization said that the government for support for childcare means that parents who stay at home are, quote, paying to care for their own kids and everyone else's. Does your organization feel that parents like those who are actually accessing the nation, or what we call CWEL-CC, are taking advantage of other parents?
I think what we're saying is that everyone pays into this system, but few actually benefit from the system. We know that it serves less. I think I said in my presentation about a third of kids under the age of 6. So what we're advocating for are policies and positions that would help a wider range of families. So I would prefer to see money go to parents. I like the Canada Child Benefit. I think that it's a good program that could be expanded upon, that it's geared to income. We could certainly continue to target funds towards children under 6. I think this would be a fairer way of treating families, and certainly it would help families of lower income because it is geared to income.
And while we can appreciate the benefits of the child care benefit in terms of assisting families and lifting children out of poverty, as a matter of fact, it's impacted hundreds of thousands of children, of lifting them out of poverty across the country, which is something that the government committed itself to. That doesn't take away from the fact that we are building a nationwide system for families to be able to access high-quality educational childcare for their children. And so are you suggesting then that after years of tax credits that your organization is advocating that as a solution to this issue in terms of childcare, rather than building a system that allows children to be well-educated, socialized, become part of a community, and get the best start in life?
reality is that Canadian families use diverse care forms to meet their needs, and those forms often change over time as their care needs change. The program, as it's being implemented, will not serve a majority of Canadians, and I have grave concerns that it will be able to meet its space creation goals. I think it's largely underfunded, and I think it's extremely complex. And I think because childcare is a provincial issue, there are great complexities across the country, and there are different programs in different ways that provinces are tackling childcare. And I think a one-size-fits-all is not the way to go.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. But however, thank you. This will be a yes or no, Chair. There weren't enough spaces before this program started, and parents couldn't afford childcare. So now we're building a system to create spaces and making it affordable. Would you suggest that we go back to tax credits instead? Yes or no?
I would say that
It's
provinces,
a yes or no answer.
provinces already funded spaces, and we're already creating
It's a-
spaces every year.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell and Ms. Sachs. Your time is gone over a bit. Madame Bérubé, pour s'il vous plaît.
Madame Bérubé, you have 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank the witnesses who are here today. It's a very important issue for our children. Bill C-35. A question for Mr. Lacasse. You gave good evidence for First Nations, Inuit and Métis. What is the relationship between the family department and the communities currently, and what are the agreements of delegation of powers between you, the Assembly of First Nations of Quebec, Labrador, and the Ministry of the Family? Thank you, Ms. Bérubé. The relationship between the Ministry of the Family and the communities. Well, there is funding for child care. There are various services. It's based on the fact of several acts and regulations that direct the operations of the administration of child care. So there are accountability arrangements and also funding provisions. So in relation to the Ministry of the Family, an agreement was signed in 2015 to support communities because there was some difficulty of getting effective support that would be interesting for the communities. So in terms of the 2015 agreement between the Commission and the Ministry of the Family, there's compliance, which is one thing, but it allows us to have a posture of support in terms of all childcare, not in a coercive way, but in order to support them, to accompany them so that they can improve their services and the administration. The pedagogical aspect is very important. No one wants to have childcare services that are just taking care. We want places that allows the child to learn, to solidify their identity. We want to we get services to help improve administration and management, and soon there will be the financial aspect. We don't have that responsibility, but we'll be able to support communities. And what's interesting in Quebec is that last year, the Act on Childcare and Education, there's a new article, 121.1. The section, it won't solve all problems, but this section 121.1 acknowledges the possibility of establishing agreements with each of the communities in order to adapt oneself and even adapt the law to the realities of the First Nations. But that will depend on the goodwill of the government, obviously. But I must say that when we talk about responsibility or relationship with the communities, we have to go outside of childcare. Only if I come back to 2017, in the context of the work of the CWELCC, there was work to develop an aspect of the side that was for Indigenous people. And that section was integrated in the regional report. So we have a more global vision, which says that for communities, children are the priority of First Nations families. And there have to be efforts, there has to be an involvement of parents and the broader family to support them in their work with the children. There's the importance of language and the culture. Culture's plural. The First Nations and Indigenous people is just not a monolith block. There have to be solutions that are appropriate to each one. And there's also the development of several educational approaches that are culturally safe, and also that children and families can live in a healthy and safe environment. And we also know that Indigenous communities like mine, I represent Abiti, Djem de Bikeyou. I talk about the Friendship Center in Val d'Or. There's a place for children. There is a childcare service, but that's a good example. And how do you proceed in other remote regions with your commission? Well, we give our support as best as possible. There are limitations in terms of resources, and it's been a long time, we're talking about decades, that we've been invoking the fact that studies attest to costs that are higher. For example, Matimekos, that's with the Laval University, that studies were done where we saw that costs were up to 65 or 100% for everything there is, and also for building. If we build a daycare, or a childcare site, costs go up drastically. And someone told me just financially it's not accessible. And also the quality of food suffers because of transportation. So there is pressure on human resources. Some communities are forced to adjust their hourly rates. Mr. Lacasse, thank you very much, and thank you, Madame Bérubé.
4-6 and probably a little bit more because you got cut short at the other meeting.
Okay, thank you so much. My first question is for Monsieur Lacasse. You spoke about the importance of self-determination in regards to children, and I actually could not agree more, particularly with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We know 15 times that the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples is mentioned. Central to that is self-determination, and I say that, share that with you because I think, particularly on matters related to children, that it's critical that Indigenous people have free, prior, and informed consent on all matters related to our children, particularly because of history, but also ongoing issues around having self-determination over our children. We just had a case in Manitoba, in fact, yesterday, that, ended up on the news. So, and I know that in your submission, you said that Bill C-35 could be improved by recognizing the right of self-determination of Indigenous people and how it should contribute to the implementation of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People by affirming First Nations jurisdiction over child care services. So I've actually put forward an amendment. The NDP has actually put forward an amendment to strengthen the bill under Article 6 to be amended so that programs and services that are culturally appropriate, that are led by Indigenous peoples and that respect the right of Indigenous peoples to free, prior, and informed consent in matters relating to children. Do you think that's an important amendment?
Difficile pour moi de pouvoir me positionner.
It's difficult for me to position myself with what you've presented. It seems good to me, but I have to say that I'm a manager, a kind of general manager, and I should ask that of my legal advisors, our colleagues who are here. But it seems more positive than anything else.
That I would actually like you to follow up on that. If you could submit that to the committee, that would be very helpful. Thank you so much. Or we can send you the amendment as well. Okay, thank you. My next...
Je pourrais le faire dès aujourd'hui.
I can do that today even.
My next question is for Madame Dizili. Is it? Sorry. Oh my goodness. How do you pronounce your last name again?
It's Deasley.
Deasley. Okay, thank you. You spoke about quality childcare, and I think I often brag. I was a former ECE. I spent many years as an early childhood educator early on. One of the things that really disturbs me about early childhood education is that people often think it's babysitting. It's not. It's actual educational facilities where you're teaching critical skills, including things like pre-reading skills for kids even prior to entering school. You spoke about the workforce and how research has shown how qualified and accountable educators are the most significant contributed to early years programs that result in better outcomes for children and families. Like, it's a critical part of education. What are some of the risks to children, families, and staff if they fail to properly support early childhood educators, including in areas like wages, benefits, and working conditions? Because I agree with you. I think it's important that we open up spaces, but it can't be at the expense of providing children with high-quality education. So can you please expand on that? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. So as you've said really well, early childhood educators are professional educators. They have a body of knowledge that they get through post-secondary education. They have expertise in pedagogy, in child development, in creating safe and inclusive learning environments, and in documentation, assessing progress, and in working with children and families. And one of the unique things about this profession is that it is a relationship-based profession. And so the reason that educators are the greatest single contributor to the quality of the program is it's that relationship that children have with the educators that they spend their day with that has the greatest impact on the outcomes for them. And so the concern is that there is a clear link between the well-being of those educators and the well-being of the children in their care. Because what research also shows across professions is that the quality of the working environment and the supports available to professionals in their practice directly impact the quality of the services they're able to provide. And it also impacts the length of time that people stay in a given profession.
And I would like to agree with that. I actually became a teacher, and one of the reasons I left the profession was because, there was no holidays, the pay was lousy, and the respect for the profession, and I don't think it's really changed. Yet I was still required to do the same things as a teacher lesson plan, curriculum plan, for the kids that I was teaching at the time. And I know that you mentioned in your remarks that Ontario's facing a workforce crisis in childcare, and you note the high numbers of people that are entering the profession and then leaving. You spoke about the importance of retention. We can focus on expanding and training, but we need to focus on retention. What would that look like?
So I think we have a number of suggestions in the brief that can help to support retention. While we don't currently collect specific reasons that people are leaving the field, I can share that we consistently hear from members and stakeholders that the major drivers of attrition include things like wages and working conditions. So it's with low wages, split shifts, and lack of benefits to support their own and their family's well-being. As you noted, there is a distinction across different practice environments in terms of the quality of support that's available to people, as well as chronic understaffing and under-resourcing of programs that can leave educators feeling burnt out. So in terms of solutions, I think wages and benefits are obviously a significant component to that solution, but there are also other opportunities to support retention in the profession that can include things like mentorship and professional development opportunities, and the opportunity to support professional growth and career advancement to make it a profession where it's viable for educators who are committed to children to stay in it for an entire career.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Gazan. Thank you to the witness for appearing. This concludes the first round. We will now suspend for a few moments. The witnesses can leave while we bring in the final panel. So thank you again, the witness, for appearing this morning and providing your testimony to the committee on this important matter. We'll suspend for a couple of minutes while we transition to the next round. Suspend. We'll begin in a moment. If you could take your seats, we will resume the second panel momentarily. Okay, we're resuming. Welcome back. The committee will resume its study of Bill C-35, an act respecting early child care in Canada. To assist the interpreters, I remind all members and those appearing virtually, please introduce yourself when speaking. Speak slowly so the interpreter has the ability to fully grasp what you're saying and interpret it. And you have the choice of choosing to speak in, you could choose to speak in the official language of your choice. Interpretation services are available. For virtually, use the translation icon at the bottom of your surface. If there is an issue with translation, please get my attention. We will suspend while it is being corrected. Please address all comments through I, the chair, and to ensure an orderly meeting, and wait until I recognize you. Also, please, no screenshots are allowed or shots in the room, camera shots while the meeting is proceeding. I would like to welcome our witnesses to begin our discussion with 5 minutes of opening remarks. Jennifer Ratcliffe, Director, Pebble Lane Early Learning. Mariam Harim, Director, Tiny Hoppers Early Learning Center, and Sybil Secek, Director, Government Relations, YMCA of Greater Toronto. We will start with Ms. Harim for 5 minutes. Please, you have the floor.
Do I have to press anything, or am I supposed to press anything? I'm good? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Parliament. Good morning. My name is Mariam Harim, and I thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak on Bill C-35. I'm a registered early childhood educator who is currently working as a director at Tiny Hoppers Newmarket South. I was an immigrant who came to Canada 30 years ago and started my career as an educator by volunteering at a childcare center. Today, I stand here in front of you as a woman who raised her 3 single-handedly while working full-time in a childcare and going to night school. Back 29 years ago, I was on a wait list for subsidy childcare for my first one, and after my mat leave ended, I was paying for the childcare through my nose. And every money that I made through that time went through to the childcare. And I had my second one, and I had my third one, and then got approved for subsidy. All the money was going straight towards childcare fees. I was on the wait list, and I kept waiting until my third one was born. It was a lot of pressure on a single mom, especially when all money is going towards childcare, food, shelter, leave aside any extracurricular activities that I would like to send my children to. Ballet lessons, karate, basketball, swimming lessons. Bill C-35 is a universal child care bill which is made to be flexible and accessible to all the families of young children. And I'm really, really, really grateful for whoever brought this across finally, because I'm happy that, yes, I did suffer as a young woman back then, but my children won't. These families that I have been taking care of for the last 30 years are not going to be suffering. They will actually benefit because children do need that kind of care, the kind of care that we've been given, and they deserve it. And not to get through with a second mortgage because they can't afford it. I've been there, done that, and I'm really, really happy. It brings tears to my eyes when I look back at my years, but I'm extremely happy for what has gone through. The idea is to give children the respect, care they deserve in childcare in Canada. This is not a winning or losing game. We are all here collected to advocate for the little lives and the future of Canada. As childcare worker, we are committed and focused on the well-being of the children in our care. As a parent, this has made me very happy for my own children that they won't have to suffer the way I did back then in my days, and won't have to take a second mortgage to be able to send their children to daycare. But as an educator, advisor, and a director at Tiny Hoppers in Newmarket South, I am concerned. Will the government continue to support us forever? I am all in for the bill C-35 as long as the teacher to the children ratio does not change and we provide the same quality care that we've been giving for the last so many years. Thank you.
Ms. Harim. We'll now move to Ms. Ratcliffe.
Good morning. My name is Jennifer Ratcliffe, and I am the director and owner of Pebble Lane Childcare, a private childcare facility that operates care programs in British Columbia. I have been in the care industry for 20 years and have experienced working with not-for-profits, the Surrey School Board, and various other childcare organizations. I come before you today as a witness to Bill C-35, an act respecting early learning and childcare in Canada. Thank you to the members of this committee for giving me the opportunity to be here. The pandemic showed us a childcare crisis like never before. We saw how quickly a lack of available childcare spaces can affect our country. This experience led to the creation of a national funding program and the realization that without adequate childcare, people cannot work, cannot pay bills, buy food, and ultimately live. If the childcare industry stops, even for 1 week, it becomes a national emergency. A large majority of families live paycheck to paycheck, and a few weeks without being able to access childcare leads very quickly to social economic issues. A national funding program is exactly what our industry needs to support families and children. I believe our future lies in the strength of the generations that come after us, and it is our job to pave the way. The delivery of the funding program is key. There are 4 major concerns that this program must address correctly in order to ensure long-term success. Each of these concerns are linked and affect one another. Funding and inclusion, affordability, accessibility, and qualified and suitable staff. Funding programs must include all types of care working towards one common goal. I ask that the wording in Section 7A include all licensed types of care. All licensed childcare spaces are required to follow the same regulations and uphold the same quality standards, regardless of business model. This allows quality standards to be consistent. Currently, the CWEL excludes disbursement funding that is used to hire support staff. Without this funding available, we have to turn away children who require additional support in our programs. This must also change so that we can meet the needs of all children. Recently, increases to funding have been made to reduce the cost to parents. However, the delivery of this funding has been extremely complicated. The approval process takes months, and there is little to no support or communication to answer questions. Providers are subsidizing the government and going into debt to discount their parent fees while they wait for funding. Operators feel as though they're taken for granted. The pressure to implement this program so quickly has resulted in overpayments to providers, families double dipping, funding methods are being overlapped, parents are stressed, and providers feel like they have no help. It's clear that the provinces are scrambling as they try to prove they can do this, but they're ultimately failing. You simply cannot throw money at a problem and expect it to change. Wait lists across the country are growing by the thousands each month, and families are left with no one to help them. Parents need to work, and if they don't have care, their only option is social assistance. This doesn't seem right. Affordable childcare is an empty promise to parents if it is not accessible. Providers are doing everything they can to accept as many families as possible, but there are simply not enough spaces. Demand is increasing at a level that we have not seen in years. New spaces must be created in order to meet demand. Private operators need to be able to expand. However, being excluded from new spaces funding mean that they cannot afford to, and the fee caps mean we are restricted when negotiating leases and working out operating expenses. I myself have written to our government in BC many times asking for help and guidance, and I have never received a response. We need our governments to support us. We need access to new spaces funding and funds to develop quality programs for the families that we serve. Funding needs to be consistent, and the application process needs to be more straightforward to allow the
to allow the creation of new spaces. The vast majority of childcare centers in our country are built from a lifelong commitment to caring for families and children. The women who create these facilities from the ground up have a passion and drive like no other, and they deserve recognition. If you want a successful childcare program, there needs to be drive, inspiration, and passion. The work we do with children is very specific and cannot be replaced with a one-size-fits-all approach. A national childcare program must be inclusive. There is simply too much demand to do it any other way for it to be successful. We need to work together to create quality licensed facilities and step away from the titles that separate us. Our country's core values are built on supporting others and ensuring equality. This funding program should be nothing less. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ratcliffe. Ms. Cechek?
Good
You have
morning,
the
and
floor.
thank you for the opportunity to join you here today. I'm Sibel Cechek, and I'm here representing the YMCA of Greater Toronto. The YMCA of Greater Toronto has more than 300 childcare program locations serving children 0 to 12 and their families. We're also part of an Ontario network and a network across Canada. And together, YMCAs have 88,000 licensed childcare spaces, making us the largest provider of nonprofit licensed care across the country. Our 55 years of experience in childcare has taught us that accessible, affordable, inclusive, and high-quality childcare is essential to the healthy child development, positive family outcomes, the participation of women in the workforce, and the strength of our economy. That's why we proudly signed on to the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Plan, and it's why we fully support the passage of Bill C-35. I have 3 key points I want to touch on today. First is the need for consistent and predictable funding. Second is the need to support and compensate our workforce fairly. And third is the need to ensure equity and inclusion as we roll out the plan. So to begin with funding, we are really pleased to see a commitment to sustained and ongoing childcare funding at the federal level in this bill. Our recommendation is that funding be explicitly described as annualized and tied to the licensed, regulated system of childcare. We also welcome mechanisms for ensuring that childcare funding provided to operators reflects their true costs. YMCAs, like other operators, are experiencing challenges with shortfalls as a result of frozen fees, the impact of inflation, and inconsistent approaches across the country. This makes it difficult to forecast and plan. We know there will be bumps in the road. We're certainly feeling them. And we welcome additional foresight to ensure operators remain financially stable so that we can sustain our current operations. And in fact, we can also think about expanding and improving the quality of the programs we're delivering. Second, when it comes to workforce, I think you've heard here today, and I would also echo that early childhood educators are the backbone of our childcare system. And we need to ensure they are well trained and fairly compensated for the valuable work they do. The CWELC system will not succeed without them. As fees for childcare go down, demand is going up, and it's going up fast. In Ontario alone, the province estimates that we will be short 8,500 ECEs at the time of full implementation. And our own modeling at the YMCA indicates that we will need almost 3,500 ECEs to expand our capacity by just 20%. And frankly, it's not just expansion that's an issue. The workforce shortage of ECEs is in fact challenging our current everyday operations today. We currently have 420 vacancies for our ECE positions open in Ontario that challenge our ability to keep our current programs stable. And without a dedicated pipeline, we can't meet current demand, yet alone fulfill the expansion goals of our agreement. So we urge the federal government to work together with our provinces and territories to formalize a consistent wage grid that compensates ECEs fairly and ensures that the system can effectively recruit and retain them. So number 3, equity and inclusion. When it comes to equity in the system, we also want to ensure that safeguards are in place. If we fail to expand the new childcare system in an equitable manner, the families that currently have childcare spaces will be the only ones who can access the benefits. This means that families who could not afford licensed childcare before CWELC will still be prevented from accessing the program because they will simply not be able to find an available space. And we also have much work ahead to ensure that children with special needs can be supported and included in the program. This will require more resources for staffing and support. We urge the federal government to work together with provinces and territories to ensure that all decisions related to expansion going forward are made with an equity and inclusion lens. And finally, if I may add one additional point, it's the need to support our 6 to 12-year-olds. Anyone with kids will tell you that learning and development does not stop at age 6, and that families continue to need support managing the high cost of before and after school care for their older children as well. So although this is outside the scope of this bill, we would love to see more attention on this important age group so that older children can have the same access to affordable, high-quality care as their younger siblings. So to close, I want to reiterate that YMCA's support Bill C-35, and we continue to be a committed partner in realizing the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Plan. We support the establishment of the National Advisory Council, and we welcome ongoing formal and informal opportunities to continue to consult with all levels of government to ensure our continued success going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sicek. We'll now begin with questioning with Ms. Ferrari for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the witnesses. I want to give Miriam a big shout out. I think we all connected with what you said at the beginning of trying to put your kids through childcare and the importance of affordable childcare. And I think it's important that everyone at the table hear me say this. I can't stress enough, I know how valuable affordable childcare is. I know that cost that I paid as a mom too, and quality, right? So I just want to say thanks to you for that. Ms. Sisik, if I can, I think I said your name right. Is that how I pronounce it? Thank you. You have touched on so many interesting points, and I know the CBC article touched a lot on the fact that you have 16,000 children enrolled in your 35,000 licensed spaces, meaning that 19,000 more children don't have access currently. And it's the lack of people to provide the care. It's not the spaces. But you said something that is of great concern, and I'm curious what you think. The children over 6, the children 6 and over, who are not eligible for CWELC, do you see centers and childcare facilities going to have to increase the fees for that age demographic to offset the cost that it's going to take to sustain this program under 6?
Thank you. That's a great question. We certainly wouldn't be looking to increase fees for that age group because we don't feel that families could manage an additional fee. Those fees are already, relatively speaking now in comparison with CWELC fees, quite high. But there will be a need to look at other ways to help those families to manage their costs because as the CWELC funding reduces fees for the under 6 age group, it does become a bit glaring in terms of the fees that parents with older children are paying for before and after school care. So certainly, we wouldn't want to increase that burden on families. We would really be looking to the government to work with us to help those families manage those costs.
Thank you. So again, we see this kind of sustainability issue sort of playing out. How are we going to fund this and ensure that the care of the child is met? If I can go to you, Ms. Ratcliffe, thanks for your testimony. A lot of what you've said, and it ties into as well to what Ms. Sisik said, we want to be equitable when we're looking at this childcare bill. That's the reality of what, especially here as a conservative, you're trying to push for universal and equitable so that the people who need this most are actually getting access to it. But you said something that is very interesting that I've heard from many centers, and I know that the people who are in the program, they've benefited greatly. I concur with that. But you said you had pressure, you felt extreme pressure to buy in. And that is a very curious comment because we've heard this repeatedly from a lot of centers that they didn't feel they had any other option than to buy in. Can you expand on that?
I think that we want to be able to support our families, specifically those that have the young children. And if we are not able to be part of the program, we don't feel that we're supporting them. So we naturally want to be part of the program, but we also have to weigh in all the other factors that we have to take into consideration when we're wanting to offer quality programs. So I think that it's really important for us to recognize what the needs are of our families. And yes, there's definitely pressure to want to be part of that. We don't want to operate outside of it. We want to be able to support our families, but we also need to be able to implement quality programs. So we're looking to hopefully be able to meet in the middle.
Thank you for that. Do you think under the way the agreement is currently written, the legislation is currently written, that you will be able to expand and offer more spaces, more opportunity for families to access childcare?
We are already finding that we are struggling to expand, and when opportunities do arise, we're having to turn them down because we are simply not able to move forward because of the lack of funding. Thousands of spaces between myself and other providers that I know, we've had to turn down because we're just not in a position to accept them because we can't access the new spaces funding, as well as having to operate under the fee caps.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And if I can go back to Ms. Haram, Miriam, if I may, you touched on quality and that, you support this bill, you think it's great, but you're concerned or you want reassurance that quality will not be compromised. And I want to tie in all three witnesses of what they've said, and in particular, what Ms. Sisak said about those children with exceptional needs or differences or disabilities. The way the bill is currently written, what would you suggest to ensure quality is still met and that it is equal access for all children?
Thank you. That's a very touchy subject right now for me because just for the last 2 weeks, we've been fighting over giving care to a child who we've accommodated for the last 2 years, and that child is autistic and has high needs, has been refused by many daycares, and we are the ones, and my educators in that room are the ones giving good care, but the mom is now, that child has been denied care in school with the school board. How does that make me feel as a mom? That mom comes to me crying every day. All the other children are starting to go with that first step. They're starting in September, and they're starting from March. It's almost at the end of April, and this mom is still trying to fight, saying, my child also needs a normal life. Yes, she's high needs, but if daycare can accommodate, why can't you? You can give the same funding, same one-on-one, and it makes my heart cry. The EI comes in, she's crying. She's literally on the floor saying, somebody help this child, put her through school. But no, the school board isn't doing it.
Ms. Herron and Ms. Ferrari, we went over a bit, but it was a compelling question. Thank you for your answer. Mr. Van Bynen, for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's great to see the scope of the witnesses today. First of all, a local Newmarket operation, and thank you for taking the time to come up. And then at the same time, having the benefit of an operator or an organization like the YMCA with 88,000 spaces, I think I heard. So it's great for us to get both perspectives as we go forward. I'll start with you, Ms. Haram. I had the pleasure of viewing your setup down on Stonehaven, I think. What's the impact of your business on the local community? What's the effect of this program for the local community as you see it?
It's made a huge impact on the families, and I'm really, like I said before, I've stated that as a parent, I'm extremely happy, and I am very happy as an educator as well, that these families are able to afford the care that was not affordable previously. So I suffered as a mom, as a parent myself, but as these parents, the young new generation that's coming up, for that matter, my children, who are 28 and 29 now, and who will be putting their children in childcare to go back to work, they will definitely benefit. And I'm happy to see these children and these new families being able to come to childcare and get quality care, because these children are at that age where they are like sponges. They absorb everything, and they need the care, the quality care.
They certainly have lots of energy and certainly require a lot of attention. The challenge that I'm seeing more often in many services is that we have federal funding programs but local provincial deliveries. And as a small operator, independent operator, what are the gaps that you think should be considered in this bill?
Absolutely. First and foremost, the quality of care shouldn't go down. The ratios should not be changed, if that is even in the mix. I have no idea about that. But if that is, it's going to definitely, the quality that we have been giving all these years and what we will be providing to the children and the families will definitely have a big impact.
I, for one, agree that the quality of care needs to be critical. I will turn now to Ms. Cisic, is it? From your perspective in managing so many outlets, how do you determine or satisfy yourself that the quality of care is consistent and is to the standards that you as an organization have set?
That's a great question. Well, the YMCA has been at this for a number of decades now, and we have an established national curriculum that was developed at the YMCA of Greater Toronto that is implemented across the country. And we also, in each province where we're operating, ensure that we are not only meeting, but as often as we can, exceeding the regulations and guidelines that are set out. And we take, great pride in our ability to train ECEs when they join our organization and be matched with mentors and hopefully have opportunities for growth and development while they're with us. That doesn't, however, prevent attrition, and we are still losing ECEs on a very regular basis for other sectors, including school boards and municipalities where wages are much higher. And so we're doing everything we can to compensate ECEs fairly with the resources that we have. But what we're finding is that there is not a level playing field in terms of system delivery. So certainly ECEs are leaving en masse to work with school boards, to work with municipalities, and even to take up careers in other sectors where they can earn more. So we would really like to see compensation of ECEs be addressed, because it is such an important component of the quality of the program experience that we're able to deliver, the quality of the staff and the relationship that the ECEs have with children. Really does contribute to the valuable experience that they have in childcare. And without those high quality ECEs, we won't be able to meet the mark when it comes to quality. So that's a big priority for us.
So we've heard that compensation is a significant component of retention. Newfoundland and Labrador recently announced $25 minimum wage for ECEs. If Ontario did the same, what would that mean for your operations? And what would it mean for the sector broadly as well?
Sure, it would be a good start. Right now, we have a baseline in Ontario of $18 an hour, which is far too low and frankly, somewhat insulting for ECEs. You can get a job and work as a barista, for example, and make more money than that. So it is, it's not congruent with the value that ECEs are bringing to our society. So I think $25 an hour, I don't know what the specific number should be, but I do know that it should be much higher than where it is. Even at the YGTA, where we are able to compensate on average around $24 an hour with extensive benefits and pension for those who are full-time. We are still losing people very regularly. So if you are taking a similar role at a school board, for example, in Toronto, you would be starting at about $28 an hour. Municipalities are able to pay even higher. In Ontario, we're also subject to wage constraint legislation right now, which is causing us another problem. But we are looking for potential solutions, and I know others in the sector have called for $25 an hour. So I think it would be, a much better baseline to be working from than where we currently are.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're over. Madame Bérubé pour 6.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je remercie.
Madame Bérubé, you have 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to all witnesses who are here today to discuss Bill C-35. I have to say that in the light of all the evidence given today, Madame Achim, it's very moving and personal. And we've talked about the types of families that need support. You've talked about problems of retention and attrition, problems of quality, also questions on the number of places in daycare. So in Quebec, we are a model for childcare, actually. But what are the most important things to be added to C-35? I'm asking all witnesses this, please. What needs to be added to C-35 is a question for all witnesses.
Is it okay if I take a question? Okay. You know, we really support and value the licensed childcare system, and we would really like to see wording in the bill that really does make it explicit that the funding that will be provided for the realization of this plan will stay within the licensed regulated system of childcare. We believe that the government does have a role to play in ensuring a certain set of minimum standards are maintained, and that that is possible in a licensed system that is publicly accountable. And we would want to ensure that that wording is very explicit in the legislation.
Keith?
I'll also just agree with that. As I mentioned in my brief, 7A, the wording of all types of care, all licensed facilities, regardless of if they are not-for-profit or for-profit, should be included in the funding.
Madame Marie?
And I completely agree with the statements both the ladies have made and the huge statement that our friend from YMCA has made as well, that the rates, the salaries that the educators are making is absolutely nothing to the amount of work they're putting in. So by all means, I am with this bill, but the pay needs to go up for the educators, for the ECEs, for the ECAs, for the kind of work that they are expected to do. Thank you.
You know, there's a National Advisory Committee on Early Childhood Learning and Care. So what should we do to make sure that the members of the Advisory Council are representative of the diversity of the Canadian population? I'd like to have the point of view of each of the witnesses, please. Ms. Ratcliffe?
Est-ce que vous pouvez répondre à la question?
Can you answer my question?
Sure. I think that it's really important for there to be representatives from each category of type of care. To the best of my knowledge, I don't believe that there are any representatives from the private sector included at the moment, and I think that that's a very key component in order for it to be successful. Everybody has to be on the same page, and as I mentioned before, everybody has to work together. There are simply too many children and too many families at this point to segregate it and to think that one specific type of care can manage that on their own. We all need to be on the same page and work together. So there definitely needs to be representatives from all different types of category of care.
Madame Sisek.
Ms. Sicek.
Thank you. I believe the process for applying to the National Advisory Council and the vetting process was quite rigorous. And I also, I don't espouse that every single perspective would be able to be represented at that council. I'm not sure how, I feel like that would be very difficult. Certainly, I think there's a good array of representation currently. We would really welcome, in addition to the National Advisory Council, ongoing opportunities for collaboration and consultation so that every voice could be represented, be it via the National Advisory Council or via forums like this or other forums.
Madame Henry.
Ms. Harim.
With the comments given, that everyone has to be in there together, because like I said before, it is not a winning or losing game. It is what we're doing for the families, for the children, and without doing any harm to the care, the quality of care that we're offering, yet making it affordable for the families, yet making it affordable because all the prices for everything you touch, and it's gone up. And are the educators making the same kind of money? No, they're not. Have the prices gone up? No.
See, Madame Berube.
Thank you, Ms. Berube and Ms. Harim.
Gazan, to conclude with 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. My first question is for Madame Harim. Thank you for your work in the area. Thank you for sharing your story about being a mom, paying for childcare. Been there, done that. Thank goodness for getting a national child care plan put in place. But, you mentioned something about, wages. And I feel like we need to address the elephant in the room. Nobody's joining the sector because the wages are low and the working conditions are really harsh. If we're going to develop a plan, we have to address this head on. So would you agree with me that within the legislation, we need a very clearly defined wages, benefits, and working conditions, that that has to be part of the bill if we're going to even achieve having a national child care strategy?
Thank you. I 100% agree. More so because the kind of work the child care workers put in, I have, again, I'll say, been there, done that in the classroom with those children, cleaning them up, taking care of them, give them the quality care, abide by the ministry rules and regulations. We do everything, and they don't get enough credit, get enough money.
Yes. Thank you so much, and I couldn't agree with you more. Madame Sisek, I'm a huge fan of YMCAs across the country. I'm blessed to have one in my riding, in fact, with a early childhood education center right in it. The YMCA Canada submission in regards to Bill C-35 states that it's in quotes, without a dedicated pipeline of new ECEs, Canada will not be able to meet the demand or fulfill the expansion goals within the agreements. And, expanding on this question that I just asked, how significant do you believe low wages, insecure working conditions, and inadequate benefits is contributing to the child care workforce crisis?
It's extremely significant. It's the number one reason that we're losing people to other sectors or to other, organizations like school boards and municipalities is the wages that we're able to pay are not high enough to make it worthwhile for ECEs to have a career and to support their own families with the current rate of pay that they're being provided. So it's absolutely critical that we address compensation. Certainly, it's not the only thing that we can do to improve what employment looks like for ECEs, but it is absolutely the first priority that we need to make for ourselves as we look at implementing this program.
The YMCA submission talks about as well how the language in Bill C-35 should be strengthened to better recognize the federal government's role in supporting early childhood educators. Would you support amending the bill so that it clearly commits to supporting decent working conditions, livable wages, and benefits as one of the principles guiding federal investments in the system?
Yeah, I believe you've articulated that quite well, and I think that is something that we would support. I think that would really strengthen the bill and the commitment not only to implementing this program, but to the workforce that is responsible for ensuring its success.
Your brief also speaks about the need for federal leadership to support an ECE workforce. To this end, would you support a national workforce strategy that would look to address issues including compensation, benefits, retirement security, adequate working conditions, education, and training opportunities?
Yes, and yes.
Perfect. And the YMCA is currently the largest provider of nonprofit licensed childcare. In your brief, you mentioned that it's critical for Bill C-35 to prioritize not-profit care. Do you agree that the federal investment should focus on an expansion of public and nonprofit childcare services rather than those that are private and for-profit, and if so, why?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it's not something that we've taken a public position on. We certainly, as nonprofit providers, understand the value of ensuring that tax dollars are being very well stewarded in the nonprofit sector. And we know that families want nonprofit childcare. We have very long wait lists that demonstrate that people are interested in the expansion of our programs. So we are very pleased that the priority has been put on nonprofit expansion, and we are looking forward to supporting that process.
The word licensed is also an important distinction. Why is it important for federal investments in ELCC to prioritize licensed center-based and home-based childcare? Yeah, so the license system does allow for public accountability and transparency, and there are certain standards that need to be met to ensure that programs are high quality, being implemented according to ratio, and safe, that we're offering safe and stimulating environments for kids. So the risks are really high when you're working with a vulnerable population of kids under 6. And so we need to ensure that public investment and the mandate for this program really is tied to the license system to ensure that we are expanding licensed, regulated, safe, and stimulating high-quality childcare for children and families.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Gazan. That concludes this round of witnesses. I would like to, at this time, thank the witnesses for presenting today and answering the questions. We will suspend, and the witnesses can leave at this time, but those virtually will have to come back in as the committee will move into an in-camera business portion for the next roughly 30 minutes. So again, thank you, witnesses and committee members. We'll suspend for a couple of minutes while we reconnect. Merci beaucoup.